Hey guys, tonight we're heading to the high Andes, where the air is thin, the soil is sacred, and the fields curve like stairways toward the stars. You're wrapped in hand-woven wool, not because it's cute though. Yes, you do look adorable, but because dawn here bites. Thick mist hugs the terraced slopes, so you can barely see the stone steps carved into the mountainside. Everything is hushed, like the world is holding its breath. There's a faint sound. Not birds, not voices. A wooden flute. Somewhere, probably beside a llama who's unimpressed, a herder plays a slow melody that winds through the fog like a sleepy snake. You can't tell what direction it comes from. It just is dot, and before you start feeling too cozy in this peaceful vibe. Here's your reality check. At this altitude, with these oxygen levels, you'd probably pass out trying to carry a basket of potatoes. Your body is not trained for these heights. The Incas were. Their lungs worked like bellows, and their calves were basically carved by God's dot. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're watching from, and what time it is. I always love reading that dot now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sun isn't even up yet, but you're already shuffling along a narrow trail carved out of sheer rock, overlooking a plunging green valley. The stone walls beside you are damp, ancient, and unbelievably smooth. At this hour, even the guinea pigs are still sleeping. The terraces, called Andines, are ghostly outlines in the dim light, stacked like Earth's bookshelf. You walk quietly, not because anyone told you to, but because this place demands it. Every step you take on the rough, ancient stones feels like an agreement with the past. You're borrowing space on sacred ground. Behind you, a child carries a reed basket bigger than their head. They don't complain. No one complains. The Incan day starts early, and so does yours. You pass a cluster of low stone dwellings, their thatched roofs still beaded with dew. A sleepy woman waves you in. She hands you a cup of mate de coca, a warm herbal infusion that tastes a bit like hay and lemon. It's meant to fight altitude sickness. It sort of works. You sip slowly as the sky begins to bruise with dawn. Light fingers its way over the peaks, revealing just how impossible this landscape is. You're standing in a vertical world where flatness was hand-built by engineers without a single wheel. One mainstream historical fact. These terraces were not just for agriculture, they were feats of civil engineering. Each level was designed with layers of stone, sand, and topsoil to prevent landslides and manage drainage. They weren't just growing food, they were growing sustainability. A faint bell jingles behind you. A llama, fuzzy and smug, trots up with a wool sack full of corn. Its handler, a teenage boy, hums under his breath. You catch the tune. It's the same flute song from earlier, now echoing between human voice and animal gait. That's how sound works here. It bounces between peaks and people. A fringe tidbit most people don't know. Some terraces were used not for farming, but for climate experimentation. The Inca created mini-environments by varying elevation and sunlight exposure. Historians still argue whether this was deliberate scientific method or just a happy accident born of necessity. But either way, it worked. As you step off the main path, you hear more layers entering the soundscape. The drip of early irrigation, a whisper of sandaled feet, a shovel thunking into soft earth. Not metal wood. You bend down and pick up one. A chacatacla, an Andean foot plow shaped like a bird's beak. There's something deeply rhythmic about it all. Not rushed, not chaotic, just steady. A tempo set by tradition, weather, and elevation. A grandmother with braids thick as rope bends beside you. She plants potatoes one by one, whispering softly as she does. Warmy papa, shula papa, girl potato, boy potato. She's not being poetic, she's categorizing them by size and color, each with its own purpose and destiny. You're not totally sure, but you think she might be blessing each tuber before burying it. Her hands are caked in black earth, and her fingers move like dancers quick, purposeful, kind. She doesn't stop to talk, but her presence is louder than words. You hear a chicken somewhere, then a soft laugh. The sun finally clears the ridgeline, and suddenly the terraces blaze with color. Gold maize tassels, deep purple potatoes, the red fringe of a woman's shawl, and still not a machine in sight. Just humans, llamas, hand tools, and the breath of the mountain. You wonder how long this system has been in place. 500 years? More? The Incas may be gone, but their terraces are very much alive. You sit for a moment on a stone ledge, watching clouds crawl below you. This isn't farming, it's choreography. One long, slow, sacred ballet between humans and the vertical earth. And the music? It's still going. Not from speakers, not from radios, but from the wind through barley, the water trickling through hand-dug channels, and the shuffle of woven sandals on polished stone. You sip the last of your coca tea. It's cold now, but it doesn't matter. The sun is warm. The stones are warm. You're not just visiting history, you're walking through it. The sun climbs slowly but steadily now, casting golden light over a world made of steps. From a distance, the terraces look like some impossible painter spent centuries layering greens and browns into stripes across the mountain face. But up close, you see the real story. Every inch of these terraces was fought for. Stone by stone, inch by inch, the Incas coaxed civilization out of cliffs. And now you're tracing their footsteps, watching the past still holding up the present. You crouch down beside a retaining wall, just one in thousands that hold this patchwork together. It's not just stacked rubble. The stones are placed with such deliberate care that they don't need mortar. They're jigsawed so tightly that not even a blade of grass dares grow between them. You run your hand along the surface and feel the past pressing back. Smooth here, rough there, cool all over. Mainstream fact time. Incan terraces are marvels of civil engineering. They weren't just farming land, they were turning mountains into machines. Each terrace had a layer system. Large rocks for drainage, gravel for filtration, sand for aeration, and then fertile soil on top. Water moved through it like blood in veins. The system worked so well, many of those terraces are still in use today. You hear a quiet clinking nearby. A boy, no older than 9, is sorting stones into piles round, flat and wedge-shaped. He hums to himself. One pile will rebuild a broken corner wall. One will weight down thatch roofs. The third? You ask. For birds, he shrugs. To scare them. His plan is to throw them. You respect it, then comes the distant boom of a hollow log being struck once, twice, 3 times. Not an alarm. A signal. Breakfast break. You don't have to be told twice. You're led to a flat platform shaded by a gnarled tree. On it rests a rough wool blanket that doubles as a communal table. Women pass around Choclo Indian corn with kernels as big as your thumbnail served, with cheese and roasted oca tubers. Everything smells like smoke and earth as you eat. Your eyes keep drifting to the way these terraces just work like they're alive. The angles of the retaining walls catch morning light at just the right tilt, as if designed for aesthetics and function. Maybe they were. Historians still argue whether the walls had an acoustic. Roll 2 carrying voices and whistles from Tier 2. Tier like a primitive intercom. You finish your lost. Bite of cheese and wander over to where? 2 men are rebuilding a collapsed section of a wall. They don't speak much, just grunt occasionally. One lifts stones. The other fits them like puzzle pieces. No cranes, no cement. Just human backs, ropes, and generations of technique. One fringe fact you'd never expect. Some of these terrace walls are subtly tilted backwards into the slope, not vertically aligned. Why? It's still a mystery. Some say it's to resist seismic shocks. Others think it's aesthetic, part of a larger sacred geometry we don't fully understand. Suddenly, a bird dives overhead and lets out a piercing cry. You instinctively duck. The workers don't. That's the kara, one says, grinning. Means good weather. You turn to look again at the terraces now stretching below you. They don't just go down, they spiral around the mountain, forming gentle crescents and contours. Some are planted in neat rows. Others look wild, chaotic, buzzing with native plants you can't name dot in the far distance. Someone whistles a long, rising tone. Without hesitation, a young woman standing beside you whistles back in a descending pitch. You realize they're talking, not yelling, not texting, whistling. The mountains carry sound better than any signal tower. That, too, was part of the system. Farmers used coded whistles to warn of floods, call for help, or just check on each other across the yawning gaps. It's equal parts clever and eerie, especially when the whistles echo back with a delay that makes your skin prickle. Now the heat has begun to build. The stones under your sandals are hot to the touch. The air is dry, the kind that makes your nose sting. You tug at your collar, but the others seem unfazed. You watch as a team of teenagers spreads a kind of sandy soil over a freshly tilled terrace. They're laughing, tossing handfuls like kids at a beach. You ask what they're doing. Adding teeth? One replies cryptically. Another laughs and explains. This dust contains crushed quartz and volcanic ash Incan fertilizer. It's more than that. The soil mix is custom for each level, each crop. They even transported earth from different regions to get it just right. Potatoes from the cool, upper slopes. Maize and beans from the warmer, lower terraces. You're standing on a farm with built-in climate zones. And here's a wild one. Historians still debate whether some terraces aligned with solstice shadows, like rural observatories. Maybe they tracked planting cycles. Maybe they were just really into sunrises. You wander to the edge of one high terrace and look down. The world below is green and dizzying. The breeze tugs at your sleeves. Somewhere, a dog barks not aggressively, just announcing his opinion on something. Behind you, the workers start wrapping up their task. The wall is almost done. You realize it doesn't look rebuilt. It looks like it's always been there. As if the mountain finally sighed in relief, someone hands you a smooth stone. It's warm from the sun, and your name has been scratched into it in Quechua syllables. It's a joke gift, but the kind that makes your heart skip. You tuck it into your pack. And then comes that flute again, faint but unmistakable. A few notes, no more. It's not telling you to stop or go. It's just reminding you, everything here moves at the mountain's pace. You're back on the move, and now your guide, a wiry elder with cheeks carved like river stones, points out a narrow stone channel running alongside the terrace edge. At first glance, it looks like a drainage ditch. But then you hear it, that delicate sound. Water trickling in a smooth, purposeful whisper. Not a gush, not a spray, just a liquid thread threading through stone. You kneel beside it. The water is cold melt from glaciers far above, funneled through a vast, invisible network that predates plumbing and Google Maps by centuries. You trail your fingers through it. It's absurdly clean. No algae, no stink, just clarity and movement. Mainstream fact? Incan irrigation systems were so advanced that modern hydrologists still study them. They didn't just bring water from the mountains. They guided it across miles, splitting and slowing it with carved stone forks, letting gravity and slope do the work. And here you are, tracing that same cold thread that once flowed for emperors and potato planters alike. You follow the channel as it winds around a curve, past humming terraces and sleepy goats. At one point, the water disappears under a slab of rock and reemerges 10 meters later, still flowing, still whispering. You realize this isn't just clever. It's sacred. Your guide nods knowingly. Yaku Mama, he says. Mother Water. The Andeans believed the spirit of the water needed to be treated with respect. No trash, no pollution. Water was a guest in the terraces, not a servant. It moved when and where it chose, and the farmers listened. There's a bend in the channel where the water slows into a shallow pool. You stop there. It's quiet, but not silent. You start noticing the water's little conversations. How it gurgles when it bends, how it shushes when it flows fast, how it giggles when it trickles over rounded stones. And you realize this is a designed soundscape. Not accidental, not incidental. The Incas made sure the water moved musically. A fringe tidbit for your trivia brain. Some researchers believe that these water channels doubled as sonic markers, letting farmers detect blockages or leaks by listening rather than looking. They could walk the channels with eyes closed and know when something was wrong. Imagine troubleshooting your plumbing by sound. A young girl crouches beside you, rinsing a handful of purple tubers in the flow. She sings softly, a call and response tune passed down from who knows how many grandmothers. You don't understand the words, but the rhythm is clear. The water keeps the beat. She tells you the names of each potato like they're pets. Yurak Papa, she says, holding up a ghost white one. Puka Papa, pointing to a ruby-skinned one. You nod sagely. You have no idea what you're doing, but you're fully invested in her vegetable roll call. A sharp whistle breaks the quiet, followed by a burst of laughter from a nearby terrace. A group of teens is rerouting the flow with a stone gate diverting the channel into a dry field. The water changes course, obediently. And here comes a scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether the system had a rigid schedule or was entirely flexible. Some believe there were precise seasonal calendars for which terraces got water when. Others think it was more cooperative neighbors negotiating turns, guided by the sun and their own rhythm. You hike a little higher, where the terraces grow steeper and the air thinner. The channels here are narrower, the slopes more dramatic. You stop for breath again. You've been doing that a lot, and no shame in it. These steps were built by people who considered llamas lightweight. Your guide gestures to a notch in the rock where 3 channels meet and split again. He says it's called a paca, a ceremonial fountain that also functions as a junction. The Incas believed places like this were sacred, a meeting of flows where earth and sky held counsel. You reach out and touch the stone. It's wet, yes, but also warm, somehow. Maybe it's the sun. Maybe it's your fingers tricking you. But there's a pulse to this place. You close your eyes and listen. You hear the water. You hear the wind stroking dry grass. You hear a flute again, distant, repeating. And somewhere, in the low tones of it all, you hear time. Now your guide is telling a story about how, long ago, water spirits would test the farmers by disappearing. Crops would begin to wilt. Panic would rise, until a child or a grandmother, or sometimes even a dog, would find the hidden blockage. Not by looking, by listening. They'd say, "The water doesn't laugh here anymore." And they'd be right. You wonder what modern engineers would make of that. Probably install sensors. Miss the point entirely. Eventually, you arrive at a terrace that's gone quiet. Too quiet. The canal beside it is dry. A stone has shifted, blocking the flow. Your guide doesn't panic. He lifts the stone, adjusts its angle, and within seconds, the channel gurgles back to life. And there it is, that sound again. Water flowing across cut stone, whispering stories older than conquest or calendar. You sit and listen to it for a while, letting it do what bedtime stories are supposed to do. Slow your heartbeat, stretch your breath, dull your thoughts. Someone hands you a leaf cup of glacier water. It's so cold it tastes sharp. You sip it slowly. Around you, the sound of farming resumes, not loudly, not all at once, but in pieces. A woman calls out to her son. A bird chirps, sounding like it's mimicking a whistle. And the water, always the water, keeps talking. You start walking again, slower this time, more deliberate. Because once you've heard these channels sing, the silence of modern pipes feels a little too sterile. Your sandals crunch softly as you return to a lower terrace, the mid-morning sun now warming your back. The temperature here shifts fast. It was frost-kissed an hour ago, and now it's approaching that perfect, breezy crispness that makes you forget time. You glance around and notice more farmers have joined the rhythm, and the terraces are filling with movement, quiet, patterned, unmistakably human. Here comes the Chakatakla again. That bird-beaked footplow digs into the earth with a thud that is more satisfying than it has any right to be. One farmer steps forward, drives the blade down with their foot, and then the partner, always in pairs, flicks the soil open with practiced grace. Thunk, flick, thunk, flick. If you listen carefully, you can hear the beat of it across 3 or 4 terraces. The Andes may not be hosting any orchestras, but they're definitely staging a symphony. You try to join. You pick up a Chakatakla, jam it into the soil with your foot, and nothing. It barely scratches the surface. The soil isn't the problem. You are. Your guide chuckles. Too soft, he says, shaking his head. You laugh too, rubbing your ankle. Mainstream fact here. The Chakatakla was so effective and culturally important that it appears in Incan art and has stayed in use for centuries. It's still used in parts of Peru and Bolivia today, because if it isn't broken, don't fix it. Especially not with a tractor that can't fit on a terrace. Around you, the air fills with low murmurs, not idle chatter, but purposeful murmuring. Every movement, every task has its sound. A soft grunt for rhythm. A wordless hum as someone sifts compost. 2 sharp claps to call a child back from the edge. A fringe tidbit. These sounds weren't just functional. Some scholars argue that particular sounds made during planting, such as the rhythm of footsteps or the clicking of tongue against teeth, were used as mnemonic devices to teach the next generation proper technique. It's like turning agriculture into a folk song you perform with your whole body. Over by a terrace edge, a man works with an oversized wooden rake, combing the soil as if he's brushing its hair. He pauses every few rows to touch the ground. Not dig, just touch. You ask why. Listening, he says, feeling what it needs. You believe him. Nearby, a woman unrolls a small square of wool. It's bright, hand-woven, patterned like lightning. She spreads it out and begins placing seeds onto it. Carefully, thoughtfully, each potato variety gets its own corner. She's not planting yet. This is a blessing, a preparation. The seeds are being reintroduced to the earth slowly, as if reuniting with an old friend. That's when you hear it, the patter of sandals against stone, the soft hey of someone panting with excitement. A boy scrambles up the terrace path, waving a long wooden pole with a sling at the end. He stops, grinning, points it toward the sky, and lets loose a small stone. It arcs into the air and pops as it lands somewhere among the corn stalks below. A scare tactic, sure, but it sounds like a punctuation mark in the day's rhythm. The farmers laugh. One claps the boy on the back. He beams. Then someone strikes a flat stone with a stick-toke-toke a lunch call in miniature. But no one stops quite yet. There's still too much rhythm in the moment. And here's where historians still argue. Did these repetitive sounds, the scraping, tapping, and whispering, have ritual significance beyond farming? Some believe these rhythms linked to agricultural calendars and festivals. Others think it was simply the most effective way to focus a tired mind. Either way, it worked. Still does. Now you sit down to rest beside a large ceramic jar filled with a sour-smelling drink. Your guide ladles some into a wooden cup and offers it to you. Chicha, a fermented corn beverage. Slightly alcoholic. A little funky. A lot ancient. You sip. It's ... not soda. But it's not bad either. You lean back and watch a group of farmers replant sweet potatoes in tight, winding lines. Each movement is done with care, but not preciousness. There's no wasted energy. It's a dance they've done 1,000 times, and will do 1,000 more. You notice one man working with a sort of half-basket, half-mask on his face. It's not for protection. It's a sunshade woven from reeds. He looks like a walking straw hut. You try not to giggle, but when he catches your eye and does a silly little shimmy, you both burst into laughter. Here's a fun tidbit. Farmers here often invent tools on the fly. Whatever works. Old sandals become trowels. Broken pottery becomes seed scoops. Modernity is welcome, but only if it fits the ancient tempo. The planting continues, but there's no urgency. They're not racing the sun, they're syncing with it. You start to feel that sync too. It's like the mountain knows how fast it wants you to move. And if you match that speed, things just ... flow. You close your eyes and focus on the sounds. The thud of foot plows, the brushing of soil, the soft laughter of families, the quiet wind in your ear. Always nearby, like a lullaby that never ends, it hits you. This is probably what a meditation app is trying to simulate. But no headphone can recreate the weight of the sun on your shoulders or the cool earth under your fingers. Final moment before the lunch break. You catch sight of two sisters arranging a row of freshly tilled soil, and one leans in to whisper something to the dirt. Not to her sister, to the dirt. You want to ask what she said, but part of you already knows, and part of you doesn't want to ruin it by translating. Lunch is brief but grounding. You sit on a woven mat and share roasted quinoa cakes, bits of salty cheese wrapped in leaves, and a sweet mash made from squash and honey. Everyone eats with their hands. No plates, no cutlery, just food, sun, and a quiet sense of earned rest. A nearby creek chatters softly, adding a pleasant contrast to the chewing. When you return to the terraces, something shifts. The tools are lighter now. The air feels warmer, and the soil freshly planted and carefully covered is resting too. It's time to check on the papas. The potatoes. You join an elderly couple as they ascend to one of the mid-level terraces, a kind of potato sanctuary. The husband is hunched, but still walks like he has an appointment. The wife carries a basket balanced on her back, supported by a colorful woven strap that wraps around her forehead. You offer to help, but she just grins, revealing exactly one gold tooth, and keeps walking. The potatoes up here are not just crops. They're personalities. They're histories. And yes, they're sacred. The couple kneels with practiced ease and begins to check on the sprouts, murmuring softly to each one. Mainstream historical fact. The Andes are the birthplace of the potato. Thousands of varieties were cultivated long before Europeans ever saw a spud. The Incas developed sophisticated taxonomies dividing potatoes by altitude, soil type, and even healing properties. And now, here you are, watching a kind of whispering ritual unfold. Sumac papa, the woman says to a blushing red one. Beautiful potato. She strokes its leaves with a tenderness you'd expect from a grandmother greeting a child. You look closer and notice small, clay figures, little human shapes, no taller than a finger, tucked at the base of some plants. Some have feathered headdresses, others wear painted smiles. Offerings, maybe. Or companions. Here's a fringe tidbit. In some remote Andean villages, it's believed that certain potato strains have spirits' identities passed down alongside their seeds. These spirits can bless or curse a harvest, depending on how they're treated. That's why even today, some farmers speak to their potatoes, apologize for leaving them in hard soil, or thank them aloud for sprouting early. You take a turn checking a row. You gently brush away a thin layer of dirt, revealing a tuber the size of your fist, streaked with gold and purple. You glance at the old man for approval. He nods slowly. "Warmiiki Papa," he says. "That one loves you." Okay, now you're emotionally invested in a potato. A breeze rolls in. Not harsh, just enough to sway the corn stalks nearby. You hear the hush of leaves, like distant applause. The couple continues their circuit, placing small stones here, a splash of water there. You follow. You copy. You're not sure what you're doing, but the field doesn't reject you. Off to the side, a younger woman is singing as she sows another patch. The melody is soft and meandering, rising and falling with the curve of the rows. There are no instruments, just her voice and the wind harmonizing. And that's the open debate among scholars. Were these work songs ritual, entertainment, or both? Some suggest they marked time, one verse per row. Others believe the songs held instructions, mnemonic lyrics, to ensure every step was followed. The answer may never be clear, but you don't care. It sounds beautiful. Suddenly, a child runs past you, arms full of flowers, bright red contuta, the sacred flower of the Incas. He drops one beside a potato sprout and moves on. You bend to pick it up, but the old woman gently stops you. "She needs it," she whispers, nodding to the sprout. A few terraces away, a man and his daughter spread dried herbs between rows. "Forms hate it," he calls out with a grin. You catch a whiff of something minty and sharp. Natural pesticide. The whole system is like a woven fabric, no piece separate, no stitch unnecessary. Time drifts. You lose track of hours. You think you might have spoken to a dozen potatoes today, and honestly, they were all quite polite. You sit on a shaded stone ledge and watch as the field fills with movement, again different from earlier, softer, less urgent. Like the terraces themselves are beginning to exhale, and now comes a moment of quiet magic. Young girl places a flat stone in the center of one terrace. On it, she sets a handful of dried coca leaves, 3 kernels of corn, and a carved bone figure. She stands very still. She closes her eyes. And then, in Quechua, she speaks. "Pachamama, protect what grows. Take what you need. Give what you can." No one around her stops. No one watches like it's a performance. This is not for show. This is the center of the system, the quiet, reverent moment when a mountain becomes a partner. You feel like you shouldn't move, shouldn't speak. The hush is so complete you can hear your own breath. Even the water channels seem to slow their chatter. The girl finishes, places her hand on the soil, and leaves the stone offering behind. She doesn't smile. She just nods and walks back to her row, where she picks up a handful of potato seeds like it's the most ordinary thing in the world. And maybe it is. The old woman returns to your side. She's holding 2 perfect purple tubers. "For your journey," she says, wrapping them in a bit of cloth. "These will remember you." That sounds nice. A little spooky. But mostly nice. As you tuck the bundle into your satchel, you realize something. These people aren't just farming. They're maintaining a relationship. A conversation with the land, the weather, the ghosts of ancestors. And yes, even with potatoes, you close your eyes and listen one more time. The soft brushing of hands over soil, the waters whisper nearby, the lull of a planting song carrying down the terraces, and somewhere, far off, a faint drumbeat of footsteps climbing the work continues. The conversation never ends, and you've been lucky enough to hear it. The cornfields begin just beyond the potato terraces, a sweeping patch of stalks that stand taller than you, swaying lazily in the afternoon breeze. Their tassels catch the sunlight like golden fringe, and the whole field whispers when the wind passes through a low, rustling murmur that feels almost musical. You push aside a stalk and step in, the sound folding around you like water got here. The air smells different sweeter, somehow. Warm corn and dust and something floral you can't quite place. You walk slowly, letting your fingers brush against the stalks, and they respond with soft creaks and crackles. The sound is gentle, like old pages being turned. Mainstream historical fact? Corn or maize was not only a staple crop in Incan society, but also a sacred one. It was planted in specially prepared terraces, often under the supervision of priests. Certain cobs were selected for offerings, others for ritual brews like chicha, and the best were preserved for ceremonies. You meet a group of women working between the rows, each with a bundle of corn husks tied at the waist like a swaying fringe skirt. They hum as they go, short phrases repeated over and over, a melody that matches the pace of their work. One reaches out and places a cob in your hand. It's pale gold with streaks of blue. Sacred corn, she says. For Pachamama. You nod like you totally understand, but honestly, you're just stunned by how heavy it is. No wonder they worship this stuff. Here's a fringe tidbit. In some rural Andean traditions, farmers believe certain ears of corn can breathe. Not literally, of course, but spiritually absorbing blessings or warnings from the wind and sun. That's why you'll find cobs tied with red string and hung in doorways. To listen to what the mountains say, the farmers move slowly but deliberately, checking for pests, loosening soil around the roots, whispering here and there. At first, you think it's casual murmuring, but your guide shakes his head. They're reminding the plants who they are. You try it. You lean into a stalk and whisper, "You're doing great." The stalk wobbles slightly. Maybe it's wind. Maybe it's appreciation. Who's to say? Deeper into the field, you come across a patch with strange rock formations, circular pits lined with smooth stones. They look ancient and oddly precise. Your guide nods toward them. Moon basins, he says. Catch silver light. Historians still argue whether these depressions had a spiritual or agricultural role. Some say they were lunar observatories. Others believe they were experimental gardens, designed to test soil warmth at night. One theory suggests they helped reflect moonlight onto the plants, encouraging nighttime growth. It sounds wild until you realize these people built empires without wheels. And here comes that quiet flute again somewhere beyond the rows, invisible but audible. The notes rise like the scent of baking corn, curving between stalks, calling attention to nothing in particular, just existing. You pause at a small altar, a stone platform, no larger than a dinner plate. On it rests a single ear of corn, a ring of coca leaves, and 2 feathers tucked under a pebble. You crouch and examine it closely. Nothing grand, nothing showy, just present. A soft voice behind you says, "This one asked to be remembered." You turn to find an old woman with silver braids and a baby alpaca curled at her feet. She gestures to the cob. That's a grandparent seed, carried from highlands to lowlands through 3 generations. You blink. You're holding a lineage in your palm. Another woman appears, holding a large basket filled with ears of corn, none of them the same color. Purple, crimson, gold, black. even a ghostly white one that looks like it glows a little. She explains how each color is planted with intention. Purple for strength, white for clarity, red for protection. You try to remember them all, but it's too much. You're just impressed they've kept the story straight for hundreds of years. She hands you a cob. This one has no name. You can name it. You hesitate. Then you blurt out, "Kevin." She blinks, then laughs so hard she almost drops her basket. "Kevin." She repeats, delighted. Okay, Kevin stays. You place Kevin gently back in the basket, and he rides with pride. As the afternoon deepens, the light in the cornfield turns syrupy. Shadows stretch longer, and the music of the field changes too. Less rustling, more creaking. The wind slows. Everything breathes more deeply. You sit on a stone at the terrace edge, watching shadows ripple across the golden tassels. Far below, you can see children running, their laughter faint but contagious. You spot a group of women setting up a loom in the shade, turning the colors of the corn into thread. Everything feeds something else here. Nothing is wasted. A sudden breeze sweeps through the corn rows, strong enough to make the stalks dance. You close your eyes and let the sound wash over you. The dry rattle of husks brushing each other. The whispery hiss of dust stirred from leaves. The occasional creak of a stalk bending toward the light. It's like the entire field is alive and telling. A story in a language without words. You glance at your guide, who simply says, "This is when they sing the loudest." You wonder if he means the plants or the ancestors. Or maybe both. And finally, as you begin to rise, you see something odd. A single cob hanging from a string over the field's entrance. It spins slowly in the wind. Your guide notices your curiosity. "That's the watcher," he says. "It listens. And if the field gets too quiet, it tells us something's wrong." You stare at it for a moment longer. The sun catches its silken fringe, and for a brief moment, it glows. Kevin would be proud. The sun begins its long lean westward, casting a softer, golden hue across the terraces. The warmth lingers, but the shadows stretch now, pulling themselves slowly over stone and stalk and soil. This is the part of the day where things slow down, not stop but loosen. Like a belt after a good meal, you've wandered past the corn rows. And now you're following a gentle path along a series of broad switchbacks. And that's when you hear them. A soft, deliberate clop ... clop ... llamas ... a herd of them. A small caravan, really, making its way up a narrow terrace path like a parade of woolly, skeptical clouds. They sway side to side as they walk, their long necks bobbing with indifference. Their hooves make soft percussion on the packed earth-half rhythm. Half-sigh. Mainstream fact here. Llamas were the Incan Empire's primary pack animals. They carried goods from the valleys to the heights, and back again, food, textiles, salt, even messages. No wheels, remember? These animals were the trucks, the trains, the postal service, and they still are in many Andean villages. One of them, a shaggy fellow with a lopsided ear, saunters right up to you and stares, deeply, critically. You attempt a polite, "Hey, buddy," and he promptly sneezes on your shoe. Your guide, now casually chewing a coca leaf, chuckles. "He blesses you," he says. Also, he dislikes your socks. You decide not to take it personally. Each llama wears a bell, tiny and tuned differently. Some chime sharply. Others offer a dull clunk. As they move, their steps create a scattered melody, the kind of natural percussion you'd expect from a wind chime dreamt up by a mountain spirit. And here's your fringe tidbit. Some herders believe that a llama's personality can be tuned by the bell it wears. A calming bell makes a calmer beast. A sharp bell? Good luck. Whether it's superstition or just rural psychology, No one's risking it with silent llamas. You follow the herd and its two young herders, brother and sister, maybe 10 and 12, who guide the animals with nothing but sticks and whistles. No yelling, no prodding, just the occasional seep and a soft cluck of the tongue. The llamas respond like they've signed a union agreement. The girl turns and grins. This one's named Doctor. You blink. Doctor? She nods solemnly. He spits in your face if you lie. You're suddenly very cautious about what you say. The group stops at a flat stretch where the llamas rest, nibbling on scrub grass and lazily blinking at the sun. The boy shows you the bundles strapped to each animal's back jars of pickled oca, woven cloths for trade, and yes, even a few tightly wrapped potatoes wearing string bracelets like they're on vacation. There's a reason for this pilgrimage. Tomorrow is market day. Town is 5 hours downhill, the girl says. 7 hours back up. With llamas, maybe 8. They're in no hurry. She says it like this is perfectly normal. And here it is. Now comes one of those curious open debates among scholars. Was llama herding mostly practical, or did it have ceremonial roots? Some historians believe certain herding routes doubled as sacred paths, miniature pilgrimages across the empire's arteries. Others say that's reading too much into a commute. Either way, the bells still ring, and the paths are still walked as the sun dips lower. The llamas begin to shuffle onward. The tempo is unhurried. 1 step, 2 steps, pause, repeat. You match their pace for a while and feel your breathing adjust, syncing with the rhythm. It's oddly relaxing, meditative. And just like that, you find yourself humming. Not a song, you know. Just a tune that rises out of the hoofbeats and bell tones and your own footfalls on stone. The herders giggle. You sing like a baby llama, the boy says. Kind of nervous, but nice. You'll take it. Further along. The path winds past a hillside shrine, a flat stone circle with small figurines placed along the edge. Tiny llamas, carved from bone and quartz, each with red thread around the neck. You stop and look. The girl gestures. They guard the journey. You ask if it's okay to add one. She nods. You pull the little rock with your name in Kwesiwa from earlier out of your pocket, place it gently among the guardians, and whisper something dumb but sincere. Thanks for not spitting on me. Doctor. You continue walking with the herd until they peel off toward a small corral for the night. The herders wave goodbye. One tosses you a handful of dried corn kernels. For luck, she calls. Or just a snack. You pop a few into your mouth. They're crunchy, smoky, addictive. Like history-flavored popcorn. You sit down on a flat rock, the sun now brushing against the peaks. The wind lifts your hair gently. Below, the terraces glow gold, stacked in their endless, steady rhythm. And there, faint, but unmistakable, is the sound of another llama caravan. Far across the next ridge, their bells float on the air like scattered notes on a stave. Clop. Clop. Ting. Clop. The mountain hums along. As twilight begins to stretch across the terraces, the air cools and settles. There's a hush that isn't silence. It's a pause, a drawing in of breath before evening truly arrives. And then, just as you're beginning to think the world is winding down, a laugh rings out. And another. Then a burst of clapping. You follow the sounds up a winding stair path, etched into the mountainside. Your legs a little sore from the day's climbing, but your curiosity firmly in charge. As you crest a lip of terraced stone, the scent of smoke and roasting peppers hits you. Someone's cooking. Someone's joking. Someone's bartering. Welcome to the mountain market. It's not a huge crowd, maybe 30, 40 people, but it feels full, alive. Like a pop-up city made entirely from woven cloth, baskets, and stubborn cheer. Blankets are spread on the ground, covered in goods, dried herbs, wool tunics, bright chilly strings, squatting guinea pigs in straw cages, don't ask. And of course more varieties of potatoes than you ever thought existed. Mainstream historical fact. Incan society had a complex and efficient barter economy. Currency, as we know, it wasn't really the norm. Trade was rooted in community trust, reciprocity, and mutual benefit. No one haggles aggressively here. It's all eyebrow-raising, good-natured ribbing, and quiet handshakes. A boy offers you a tiny hand-carved flute in exchange for a foreign coin you'd forgotten was in your pocket. Deal. You can't play a note. But now you own a musical souvenir with exactly 2 wobbly tones. Someone starts singing. A woman with a voice like smooth stone warming in the sun. Her song rises over the crowd in lilting Quechuono instruments, just rhythm and memory. Others join in. The melody folds into the space like steam into dusk. Nearby, a group of children is chasing each other in between merchants, tossing what looks like puffed seeds at each other. You flinch when one hits your neck out, but when you turn around, the kids just collapse in giggles. You duck behind a stall and smile at the old man selling medicinal plants. His table is filled with pouches labeled in careful, spidery ink. You recognize coca, maybe chamomile, but the rest are a mystery. He grins and hands you one. For altitude. Or heartbreak. Works for both. And here's your fringe tidbit. Market terraces like these weren't just trade posts, they were news stations. Incan runners, chasqui, would pass through, sharing imperial decrees or messages via quipu, those knotted strings used for record keeping. Local gossip and national orders got passed around with the same attention. Sometimes, more for the gossip, you hear one of the merchants whispering about a neighbor's llama who allegedly fathered 2 babies in one season. Suspiciously strong genes, she mutters, smirking. Voices rise and fall all around you. Jokes, negotiations, stories. You catch snippets as you walk. My cousin swears this chili keeps ghosts away. These shoes? Made from recycled tire. Don't laugh, they grip like mountain cats. No, this quinoa doesn't taste like dirt. One woman gestures to you with a loop of yarn and points at your hair. Too plain, she says with a wink. Come. She weaves a bright green strand into your hair with nimble fingers, humming the whole time. Now, people will think you belong here. There's something comforting about the way this market operates. Not with frenzy, but with ease. The pace is not slow because they're lazy. It's slow because everyone's listening. Listening to the rhythm of walking feet, to tone of voice, to the wind as it lifts a corner of a shawl and sends flower petals tumbling. Historians still debate whether market days in rural areas were coordinated by central authority or if they arose organically, aligned to moon cycles or simply the rhythms of harvest. Some argue they served as part social, part economic reunions across mountain families. Others think they were just the best excuse to bring people and potatoes together. You settle on a stone bench, watching the crowd as twilight deepens. Someone begins clapping a simple beat. 2 young boys take center space, stomping in turns, their sandals slapping the ground in perfectly timed circles. It's not quite dance. Not quite ritual. Something in between. A woman leans over to you and murmurs, "They're showing off for the harvest spirits." Then she adds with a smile, or maybe for each other. Who knows anymore? You get it. The line between sacred and silly is thin and flexible here got, and then, unexpectedly, the wind changes. Cooler now. You see someone wrap their shawl tighter. The market begins to fold, not abruptly, but like a sunset fading from purple to gray. Blankets are shaken out. Flutes are packed. Baskets hoisted. You hear someone shout a farewell from across the field. Tell your sister her corn is jealous of mine. Another laugh dot the singing fades, but a few notes still drift out from a corner where an old man strums a charango 5 strings, high and sweet. He sings under his breath. You sit nearby, not speaking, just letting the night do what it does best, settle in. And when the last basket is carried off, when only the embers of the cook fire glow, the terrace is silent again. Not empty, just resting. Like everything else here, it breathes even in stillness. You rise slowly, with a piece of green yarn in your hair, a potato-shaped whistle in your bag, and the scent of smoke lingering on your sleeve. The stars begin to peek out, and the terraces once filled with bartering, laughter, and song now sit quiet, like a theater after curtain call. The market's gone quiet, and the last flickers of golden light have finally faded behind the jagged spine of the Andes. The terraces, so lively all day, now stretch in shadow-wide and dark like the folds of a sleeping animal. You descend along a narrow trail where each footstep thuds softly in loose earth. The temperature drops fast. 1 minute it's pleasant. The next, it nips at your fingers down in the lower terraces. There's a strange beauty to the cold and elegant sharpness to the air that makes every breath feel crystalline. The sky above is a vault of stars, so dense and vivid it looks like someone spilled salt across black velvet. You can make out constellations you've never seen before. Or maybe they're familiar ones, just tilted at new angles. As you walk, a man passes you without a word. He's wrapped in a dark poncho, holding a bundle of burning herbs. He trails a thin line of smoke behind him, pausing occasionally to let the scent steep into the stones. You inhale. Something bitter, something sweet. Something like pine and pepper had a quiet argument at a fireplace. Your guide reappears, now with a thick shawl wrapped around his shoulders and a small lantern in hand. He gestures you toward a terrace that seems different, not planted, just smooth, dark soil, perfectly raked and entirely bare. Kosha, he says softly. A frost terrace. Mainstream fact. Incan farmers developed frost-resistant techniques, using terraces specifically designed to trap or release heat overnight. Some even redirected cold air away from sensitive crops using natural wind tunnels and reflective stones. In a landscape where nighttime frost could sneak in during any season, that was the difference between a harvest and a disaster. You stand at the edge of this dark, open space and listen. Nothing. Then, a faint hiss, almost like sand sliding against sand. Frost creeping in. You crouch down and hover your hand above the soil. Still warm. It holds the day's sun like a memory dot. Your guide steps carefully into the terrace, center, and places 3 stones in a triangle. Then he whistles soft, low, barely more than a breath. And somehow, you realize he's not calling anyone. He's warning the frost. We see you. Not tonight. Here's a fringe fact. Some communities still use quartz or mirror-like stones embedded in soil to reflect nighttime cold sky radiation, away from fragile plants. It's ancient environmental engineering, disguised as superstition, and it works. Further down the path, you come across one of the storage huts built into the hillside. It's open, and inside are hundreds, yes, hundreds of dried tubers stacked like gold bricks. Shuno, freeze-dried potatoes, made by exposing them to cold nights and warm days. Then stomping out the moisture underfoot, you pick one up. It's light as a bone, rock hard, smells faintly of dust and something ghostly. The wind picks up again. This time it carries whispers. Real whispers to farmers, speaking just beyond the ridge, checking each other's fields, making sure nothing's too cold, too still. No one wants a surprise tonight. Historians still argue whether frost watch rotations were organized by imperial officials or if they were a community-level thing. Like neighborhood watch, but with alpaca blankets. Either way, someone's always watching. Someone's always listening for that first crunch of frozen leaves. You walk the edge of the terrace and begin to notice shapes. Flat stones placed at angles to catch the moonlight. Reeds tied in crosses stuck into the soil. Bowls of water left out and now icing over at the edges. Each a signal. A whisper to the mountain that a teenage girl walks past, holding a bundle of llama wool in one hand and a burning stick in the other. She taps the ground gently at each step. Keeps them from getting lost, she says cryptically. The cold ones. The spirits who wander. You offer her a confused nod, and she just shrugs. They don't bother you if you're polite. You believe her. You're extremely polite from now on. And then, just as the night seems to settle into stillness, a soft sound begins. Singing. A man's voice, slow and low, echoing up the terraces like fog. No accompaniment, no performance, just voice in air, threading through the cold. Then a second voice joins. A third. And it becomes a lullaby, not for you. For the crops. You sit down on the smooth rock and close your eyes. You don't understand the words, but you don't need to. You feel them settle in your ribs like heat. The melody is uneven, rolling, more like storytelling than song. A fringe tidbit? In some Quechua-speaking communities, lullabies for plants aren't just metaphor, they're ritual. Sound is believed to carry warmth, protection, memory. And maybe it's true. Maybe the frost listens. Someone places a clay mug beside you. Warm quinoa, tucked to a thick, sweet drink like oatmeal in tea form. You sip. It's nutty, comforting. The perfect kind of weird. The stars above wheel slowly. Orion's belt dips lower. You can now hear the frost settling, the faint tick of ice forming on grass blades. But the soil still breathes warmth. The stones still hold the sun. And around you, the farmers hum and whisper and watch. They don't fight the cold. They welcome it, manage it, charm it. You exhale, your breath silver in the air. Somewhere behind you, a fox cries once, sharp and short. Then silence again. The earth breathes in, and you, somehow, breathe out. The night has fully folded itself around the mountains now. Every ridge and terrace blurred into silhouettes against a sky so vast, it feels like you might fall into it. Your breath is steady, slower now, visible in little clouds that vanish into the cold. You're moving carefully, following your guide along a narrow path that dips and weaves between the sleeping terraces. No more tools clack. No more llamas shuffle. The only sounds are those of the land itself, the soft rustle of dry grass, the distant burble of water still whispering down its ancient channel, and the occasional flap of a night bird overhead. Invisible but assured in its flight, your guide stops in front of one last terrace, not the highest or grandest, but perhaps the oldest. The stones are darker, weather-worn, slightly slanted as if leaning back to rest. This one doesn't grow anything anymore. No rows, no seeds, no canals. Just stone and air. This one sleeps now, your guide murmurs. But it remembers. You step onto it and feel that immediately. The silence here is heavier. Not oppressive, just thick. It's the kind of silence that listens. Mainstream historical fact. Many Incan terraces fell out of use after colonization and forced relocation disrupted traditional farming practices. Yet even unused terraces remain largely intact, held together by design, respect, and gravity-defying brilliance. This terrace holds echoes. Not literal ones, deeper ones. You kneel and press your palm to the cold stone. It's not warm anymore, but there's a memory in it. 1,000 sunrises, 1,000 hands, 1,000 whispered stories, lost in the soil, not really gone. You see now, these terraces weren't just places to grow food. They were living calendars, soundboards, memorials. One scholar once called them the Andes autobiography, written in stone and soil. You get it now. Your guide lights a small fire, no sparks. Just a low, glowing bowl of coals in a clay dish. He sits beside it, unwraps a cloth from his satchel, and begins pulling out tiny objects. Each is placed carefully on the ground. Coca leaves, llama wool, corn kernels, a small carved figure. The offerings aren't grand, but the care is. He doesn't speak much, just arranges the pieces in a spiral. Then he hums a low sound, halfway between a lullaby and a yawn. Here's a fringe tidbit. In some Andean communities, nighttime offerings are not made to ask for blessings, but to report on the day, to share how the land was treated. What was planted, what was taken, and what was given back. It's less a prayer and more a conversation. You sit quietly with him, watching the fire dance in miniature. Smoke curls upward, lazy and unbothered by the wind. It smells like pine and ash and something faintly floral dot. And finally, the guide turns to you. He points to the ground in front of you. Your turn, he says. You hesitate. Then reach into your satchel and pull out the green yarn braided into your hair, now loosened. A string from your woven bracelet. And yes, the carved potato whistle named Kevin. You set them gently beside the fire, not as payment, but as a thank you, Terraces. Thank you, potatoes. Thank you, llamas. Even you, Dr. Your guide smiles. Now they'll remember you. You lie back, cradled in earth that has held generations. Overhead, the stars feel closer than they should. Your ears are full of the gentlest sounds. Wind brushing dry stalks, water licking stone, the fading crackle of coals. You don't speak. You don't move. You don't even think too hard. You just are . And here's the final open debate for the night. Historians still argue how much of Incan farming was empirical science versus spiritual practice. But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe it was always both. Maybe the land doesn't care what we call it, as long as we listen. You close your eyes. You still hear it all. The rustle of the sleeping fields, the creak of ancient stone settling into coolness, the sigh of the mountain, deep and steady, and finally, everything goes quiet. Not silent, just still. The terraces, worked and walked and whispered to all day, have exhaled. They are resting now, just like you. And now, with your eyes closed, the mountain holds you like a memory. Its stones wrap around your bones, and its soil presses beneath your spine like an old familiar mattress. The wind has softened to a low, continuous hum, just enough to tickle the grasses, to breathe across the terraces like a caretaker checking each row. The last coals have dimmed. The voices have faded. Even the water, always the water, has quieted to the smallest sound. A hush beneath the hush. You lie still in the dark, as everything around you goes from rhythm to rest. The earth is no longer pulsing. It's dreaming. The llamas are curled like clouds in their corral. The Chacatacla rests in the soil where it last struck. The cornfields sway without urgency, no longer listening, only swaying. High above, the stars blink slowly, the way people do when they're just about to fall asleep. The whole sky seems to breathe with you. And in this final moment, as your body sinks into the quiet warmth left behind by the day, you feel a whisper, not in your ear, but in your chest. It says, "The land remembers you. So drift, gentle listener. Let the stone hold you. Let the wind hum you down. Let the terraces rock you like the Andes have rocked generations. You're safe here. You're still here. And all around you, the quiet endures. Good night. End of script. Sweet dreams."